So Democratic Club General Meeting for June 15, 2025.
That's
Well, so the online and in the room. Yes. Thank you.
Jeez Louise.
All right, our meetings are open to the public and we welcome new attendees and members. The Democratic Club of Sunnyvale committed to providing a welcoming, respectful, friendly, safe, supportive, and harassment-free environment for members and guests. The club expects all leaders, members, and attendees to respect the personal rights and dignities of all individuals to create a productive, inclusive environment for all. All right, we have the agenda today. So it's shown here on the screen. So we are excited to have Richard Mehlinger here today to summarize our council's strategic priorities after just a 12-week on Thursday. We will also then move to the announcements. We've got a number of selection coming up. So that is going to take a while. And then at 3:15, we have an invited guest speaker of honor, Senator Aisha Wahab, the Sunnyvale's state senator. And she will be coming to speak about legislative successes for the last session, as well as upcoming legislation that she has proposed and how California is handling some of these federal action. Can you make me a list? Can you give me a stamp? Okay.
What, who is that? What's it? Oh, well, maybe it is.
All right, can we go to the next, please?
Okay, we're good. Crystal, let me see if I can make your microphone louder.
Welcome, slide.
Yes.
Good.
We have Councilmember Mehlinger here. I'm going to invite him to the microphone so he can give us a summary of what happened this week at the council strategic priority session.
Thank you very much, Crystal. I'm just on the table here. Once. There you go. Hello, and could we get the next slide, please? Hi there, folks. My name is Richard Mehlinger. I'm a council member representing District 5 in Sunnyvale. That covers most of the area between Highway 101 and the Caltrain tracks. And I'm here to give a brief overview on the results of the strategic planning session that City Council had on Thursday, as well as I'm also going to go over the study issues that were approved in February. Actually, can we get that back in the presentation?
Yeah, hold on, I'm trying. Sorry.
1 second.
Thank you. Very friendly.
So with our new city manager, Tim Kirby, we've been at a newly sworn in council this January. We've been taking a look at the way that council has been doing its strategic and work planning process. And we've been working to realign that and change that. And so many of you who've been involved in the city before are used to the strategic session taking place in January, followed by the study issue workshop in February, followed by a budget workshop in May. And you might have noticed that we're following a bit of a different process than that. In January, we had a council retreat, which was essentially an exercise as council because last year we hired a new city manager, a new city attorney, and we just onboarded 2 new council members with that much change in the organization. Council and the city manager decided that having a retreat to sort of build the team, get to know each other and our priorities better, and, discuss effective process and sort of what our own personal goals and sort of personal foci as council members. That would be really, so we had that in January. We had the study issue workshop in February. I'll get to the specific results of that after we talk about this. And then we finally had the strategic session on this last Thursday. It used to be that strategic sessions would involve a very detailed presentation and overview from each city department, followed by discussion of 2 or 3 specific areas that had been decided by the mayor and vice mayor the previous year. And we decided to take a different approach this year. Rather than having extremely in-depth per department updates, which has always been something of a bear for the department heads to put together and often left the discussion of actual strategic priorities very crammed at the end of the meeting. We did a very high level overview on community survey data for the city. And you can find this, I'll get the slide on this to Crystal after the meeting so that she can send it out, as well as the video of the actual strategic session. We discussed a statistically significant community survey of the city residents, 297 residents that were carried out over January and February. And then also a discussion of the financial and economic perspectives for the city. I'm going to talk about that for a minute because I think this is really important to understand as we come into the coming.
Richard, can you pause for a second? Because some people are complaining the audio is,
If you have.
I don't have a microphone, do I? Maybe if you can hand me the microphone. See what they're hearing online. So is there still a problem with the audio?
Your audio is pretty good, a little blurry.
Okay, so it sounds okay.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a faint reverb or echo from where you are, but it was loud more from where Richard was sitting. So maybe it's just where he's sitting in relationship to the speaker in the room.
Oh, she's in.
Could be. On that speaker, but this is a big roof. There's a lot of echo room.
But if he sits where you're sitting, we can see your picture.
Not there.
And he could talk through the microphone in your computer.
Crystal, how does this sound? I'm walking the slide. Okay, that's not ideal. How does this sound to our people on Zoom?
Zoomers.
Zoom listeners, how does this sound?
It sounds better now.
Sounds better now? Max? All right, I'm gonna take silence as a set in this case.
Yeah, but you need to turn off on Ambrosia Studley's computer. You need to turn off the blur my background because it's blurring everything.
The joys of technology. I don't know what I think that the phone is the camera that is recording.
They can't be turned all the way into.
Hmm.
Yeah, whatever's logged into the Zoom is Ambrosia Studley. That's the camera, but it's got the Zoom setting on it is blurring the background, and sometimes we can see Richard, and sometimes he's a blur.
I even pointed out.
We'll pause my presentation when we get the technical.
You could do it with audio in your presentation.
Sorry,
You could do your presentation with just your audio and just the slide.
that works for me. Where was I? We were talking about the economic forecast for the coming year. And I regret to inform you all that it is very bleak. And this amounts to
Or
a national self-inflicted wound. the chaos that the Trump administration has unleashed with the firings of hundreds of thousands of federal officials, with the every other day tariffs, the constant churn and regulatory uncertainty that this is creating has caused the stock market to tumble. The Atlanta Federal Reserve is estimating currently negative 2.5% GDP growth, annualized GDP growth for the first quarter of this year, as opposed to, I believe, positive 2.3% GDP growth in Q4 of last year. We are headed towards recession. This is a very bracing economic situation that we are heading into. I also just came from the state of county last night, and there is serious concern that state, county, and local federal funding for state, county, and local governments, for school districts or special districts, will be cut without precision, without remorse. The county receives over $3 billion in funding from the federal government. If that money were to go away, the results would be catastrophic. So I'm saying all of this to sort of set the tone and the picture that we received on Thursday, that we are heading into some very choppy waters as a community. So as we, sorry, we're not taking questions.
Right.
So as we went through the discussion, ultimately, that sort of set the stage. And in the past, our strategic priorities that we settled on, we've had this annual strategic priority session. The strategic priorities have not changed much over the years, but it has also felt that they've had little impact on the sort of data that
Should be the one.
and we had a number of past strategic priorities, including ability of infrastructure to support traffic and development, downtown Sunnyvale, civic center modernization, support the unhoused community, accelerate the active transportation plan, Vision Zero plan and one action. And there's a sixth that is escaping me at the moment, equity, access, and inclusion. And one of the things that very quickly became apparent as we were discussing, and as the leadership consultant the staff brought on made her presentation, is that many of these strategic priorities did not feel particularly strategic. They didn't necessarily feel high level enough, and they didn't necessarily feel like they were really driving action on the part of the city government. Some of them were. Equity, access, and inclusion, yes. Support the unhoused community, yes. The civic center modernization, well, we had the library bond measure, and that did. And then what after that? Ability of infrastructure to support traffic and development. That's kind of table stakes for any city government. What does that mean? And so, as we discussed, we came up with a very different set of priorities, some of the old strategic priorities sort of pulled into these, but we wanted to take sort of a higher level and more strategic approach. And one of the changes there, in terms of taking that more strategic, is that we are no longer going to be having an annual strategic session. It is going to be every 2 years now, tied to the elections. The idea being that strategic doesn't just mean big, it also means relatively long. And you want a degree of stability there. And by tying it to the election cycle, we're essentially making sure that each council gets its chance to set its own strategic priorities, and that staff has stability for 2 years in terms of what those are going to be. And that stability is really important for staff to be able to make progress. One of the things that very much can impede progress at a city level, very frequently, and as many of you know, I was an advocate for this law in livable Sunnyvale, and served on the Vice Pedestrian Commission for years. So I very much understand these But very frequently you'll get advocates coming to the city saying,
Problem and we need to fix it right now. And yeah, right. We've all felt that. I think I've felt that, and I feel that sometimes even on the dais, right? Um, and that is a very understandable feeling. It's an extremely understandable feeling. But the problem is that if you are constantly saying this is a problem and we need to fix it right now, then staff is constantly having to start and stop work on different priorities. Ultimately, it gums the whole system up. And so having long-term stability in our strategic priorities is something that's really important. And so what these strategic priorities are, I'm going to talk about them in detail in a moment, but these are going to feed in to a new staff work plan, a council approved staff work plan that is going to be, that's the executive leadership team is going to be going off and developing over the next few weeks, and that they'll be bringing back to us in the next couple of months, in the next month or two. And that's going to really determine what's going to take place over the next 2 years. And if something comes up that the community says this is really urgent and we need you to do it now, with that work plan, we'll be able to say explicitly, you know, okay, if this is really urgent, what do we cut? What do we bump? What do we say? What do we take off the list to fit this on? And is it worth taking something off the list to fit that on? And having that, I think, is going to be very, very valuable for the organization. And so now what I'd like to do is I'd like to sort of go into these and talk about how we reached these priorities and a little bit about what they mean. So these are 2-year goals. We're going to be working on these. These are going to be sort of like the high level priorities. If something doesn't fit under these goals, it doesn't mean it won't happen, but it means it probably won't be highly prioritized, right? Because, well, the city government, we have incredible staff. And I want to say, I think we have the best council in the region. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on it. We can do anything, but we can't do everything. And by choosing to prioritize this, we are inherently choosing to deprioritize other things. So let's get to it. A responsive, transparent, efficient city government. Now, I want to be clear, we are not using the word efficient in the way that Elon Musk is using the word efficient. But what we're talking about here is, you know, we've heard from the community, and I've felt as a council member, and I've heard from colleagues, and I've heard from city commissioners, and even from staff, that many of our processes, you know, can be out of alignment. You know, we've had a lot of discussions about the process for getting a special event permit. Last summer, we had a study session on that. There are 8 departments involved in that currently. Staff is working on developing a new plan, a new process that we're hoping to have come back this year. And, you know, that's something, you know, we've got a study issue moving forward on the study issue process that we approved last year, because it's felt like the study issue process has gotten too slow, too heavyweight. I'll let Mike say the line when he has the chance. So what we're talking on top of that, you know, we have as a city many, many metrics, performance metrics, service levels that are defined by council. These are part of the budget. It's a really important part of the way staff operates. It's a really important part of how the budget gets done. The budget is a 1,000-page PDF. Trying to figure out those metrics, find those metrics, see how they're performing year on year. Even as a council member, that can be challenging, let alone as a member of the public. So something that we discussed quite a bit was, you know, okay, how do we get these metrics more forward facing to the public, right? So what we're talking, and then also we want a city government that when residents reach out with a problem, it feels like that they're heard, that it's addressed, that if it can't be addressed, that they get a good explanation as to why. Right. And so that's what this priority encompasses. When we talk about efficiency, we're talking about the efficiency of process. We are not talking about Elon Musk's understanding of that term. And so I just want to be really clear about that. An accessible, engaged, and welcoming community. So this is something that kind of came out of the previous equity, access, and inclusion priority and includes it. One of the things that we said on Thursday was like, we see that fitting under this priority. This includes a lot. So welcome, I'm going to go in reverse order. What does it mean for a community to be welcome? It means that, no matter what you believe, no matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter how you worship, no matter where you're from or your family is from, you feel welcome in this community, right? That's something that's really important. Everyone should feel welcome in Sunnyvale. And not just that, everyone who interacts with the city government, who works for the city government should feel welcome, right? So this is about, continuing to promote those dirty words of diversity, equity, and inclusion. How those came to be dirty words, I'll leave that be for now. An engaged community. That means civic society. It means fostering organizations like this. It means having people be involved. Democracy is not a noun, it is a verb. And civic engagement is critical to maintaining our democracy. And I'm not just talking about political organizations like the Democratic Club, like Livable Sunnyvale, like SUFA, like any of the other very noble and excellent organizations that work in our city and advocate in our city. I'm talking about bowling clubs. I'm talking about little leagues. I'm talking about, just having neighborhood meetups. It's talking about, the neighborhood block parties, national night out, getting people to know their neighbors. I'm reading a book called Happy City right now. And the thesis is that your happiness, your trust, that's based in large part on the frequency of social interactions that you have, not just with your close friends and family, but with your neighbors, with your bridge partners, with your barista at the cafe. It's these day-to-day social interactions that are critical to our own happiness, right? And to our prosperity as a city, and even to maintaining our democracy. An accessible city. On one level, this gets into much of what we were talking about with transparency earlier, right? That people can access city services, that people can understand what their government is doing. But it also talks about things like physical accessibility, the ADA improvements to sidewalks, curb cuts. Curb cuts are a critical piece of infrastructure for anyone in a wheelchair, anyone with a stroller, anyone who's just walking back from the grocery store with a push cart, right? And so and one of the things that was very clear and that I think that has been discussed almost ad nauseum with our new city manager, with Tim Kirby, has been the need for the city to take a greater role in going out to the community and bringing the community in. And so this is going to be a major part of the work that we're doing over the next couple of years. A sustainable city, advancing climate action, active transportation, and the Vision Zero plan. So those are three big plans that get to how we get around in the city, how the built environment looks, how we are decarbonizing, how we are ensuring not just decarbonization, but, are we using water efficiently? Are we drought resilient? Are we climate resilient? Are we planting trees? Are we building housing? Right? So previously there was that strategic priority on, advancing climate action, the active transportation plan, and the Vision Zero plan. And we heard from some members of the public, maybe those don't go together. And I think that they were right on one level, that just having a strategic priority that is go implement these three plans doesn't necessarily make sense. But a strategic priority of a sustainable city overall that incorporates those plans. And I'd also say, incorporates the housing element as well. Again, and implementing that isn't optional. Implementing the climate action plan, there are state mandates on that as well. But this is the idea of a city that is green, that is resilient and, well, sustainable. And that's going to get into, yes, implementing these plans, but also implementing a lot of stuff around those plans. So one of the things that we did change is that it's not accelerating, it's advancing. That was something we actually heard from the public quite a bit, and I think everyone agreed with. That's a good change of verb. But also it doesn't say advancing the climate action playbook or the active transportation plan. It says advancing climate action, which includes the playbook, yes, but might also include some things outside of the playbook. It says advancing active transportation. Again, that includes some things in the plan. It also includes some study issues that are moving forward that aren't in the plan. And the Vision Zero plan, okay, yes, that one is specific to that. And Vision Zero, for those who aren't familiar, is specifically traffic safety. The goal of Vision Zero is to get to zero fatal crashes, zero serious crashes with fatalities or serious injuries. A model to prevent homelessness, prioritize new housing, and support the unhoused community. I think it is fair to say that the single biggest challenge facing our city right now is the unhoused crisis on our streets. We live in one of the wealthiest communities in the country, and it is shocking, the poverty that we see on our streets every single day. And this is, as our city manager said, a wicked problem. This is a very hard problem to address. Previously we had a priority that was simply support the unhoused community. And that is something that we've made very good progress on over the past year with the inclement weather shelter program through motel stays, an actual motel program to help get people off of the streets, and it transitioned into housing. There is a lot that the city has done on that front, but one of the things that I think was very clear as we were discussing is it's not enough to be talking about supporting the unhoused community. That's very important, but we also need to be talking about how we're preventing new people from becoming homeless, from becoming unhoused. And we need to be talking explicitly not just about supporting the unhoused community, but getting people out of homelessness and housed. And so that broader perspective, I think, really is what has driven the shift on this priority. And so this is something that I think is going to be, as I said, I think this is probably the most serious local crisis facing the city right now. And it's something that we're going to be focusing a lot of effort on in the coming years. We already are, and we need to be doing more. Finally, modern infrastructure. So as we were discussing this, some questions kept coming up about where do things like the library fit in those other four priorities, the idea of a new library. Do we want to do a big new main library? Do we want to do more of a branch model? There was some good discussion about that. And one of the things that I think we settled on is, we'd like to have a study session specifically on that dichotomy. Do we want to do the big main library idea, maybe value engineer it down compared to what we put on the ballot last year? Or do we want to look at something that is focusing more on a branch model? It's not just the library, though, but it also includes things like the water pollution control plant rebuild. It includes things like rebuilding the fire stations, looking at broadband access in the city. So this is really focused on physical infrastructure and making sure that we are keeping our physical infrastructure up to date, because a lot of it is aging. And so these are the 5 that we came up with. And the next step is, because we gave sort of very high level direction, staff is going to come back, wordsmith this a bit, put a few bullet points under each of these items. We had some extensive discussion about, like, okay, What do each of these look like? You know, what are some of the things that we specifically want called out on that? And so staff is going to bring something back to us in a few weeks to adopt as a final approved version. Goodness, I've talked quite a bit and we started late. So Crystal sent out the written update, the written review I did on the study issues. And so that's a two-part, unfortunately very long piece that I wrote. And so I'm not going to try and summarize that and do an overview of that here, except to say we prioritized 10 study issues in February, including a study issue to look at establishing a memorial to the incarceration of Japanese Americans during the Second World War, a study issue to signalize 3 intersections on Fair Oaks, Balsam, Taylor, and McKinley, study issue on our sign ordinance and making sure that's compliant with the First Amendment and that we're not allowing excessive light pollution. Number of other items that might be of interest, expanding the role of the Heritage Preservation Commission. If anyone's got any questions about those, as I said, Crystal sent out the write-up I did, which has a full list of what we did on that front. And with that, I think now is probably a good time to take questions. Yes. All right. So the question was, my earlier discussion about this sort of very bleak picture I've painted federally, and I'm going and sort of, we're all feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety in the face of this chaos, and what can we do? Thank you. Yes. Yes, indeed. Uh, well, that's a very good question. And in terms of a bleak situation at the federal level, I'm gonna give my really terrible pep talk. However bad you think it is, it's worse. Nationally, we are in a car doing about 60 miles an hour towards a 5-foot thick concrete wall. And when the impact happens, it will be explosive. And no brakes. And the guy in the driver's seat has his pedal to the metal. It is very, 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 very bad. We are, and I am going to be frank that the legal structures that define this country are coming undone at an alarming rate. There are no words to describe the depth of my contempt for the Senate Democrats who voted for the continuing resolution yesterday, including Chuck Schumer. I said this was going to be a pep talk. Here's the good news. They're in the car with us, and we have the good sense to be bracing for impact. A lot of people are already going to get hurt. The New York Times is estimating that 3 million people are going to die over the next few years just from the shutdown of U.S. aid. But we are the ones bracing for impact. We know the crash is coming and is coming soon. And so what can we do? And the answer is, remember what I said about democracy is not a noun, it is a verb. Get involved at the local level. Support your community. Get involved in organizations like this. Get involved with Sunnyvale Community Services, with Helping Hands. Help your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors. Build that trust. Trump won in large part because social trust in this country has collapsed. And that collapse was engineered, and we need to be fighting back against that. Tending our own garden, that itself is an act of resistance. Making Sunnyvale a model for what an active, engaged, civically engaged, democratic society can look like, what a progressive city can look like, what a sustainable city can look like, how good that is. Making this a place that everyone looks at and says, gee, I'd like to live there. That's a thing that we can do. And I'm going to say one other thing. the goal of the current administration is, to the extent that there's a strategy, and I don't think there's much of one, because if you're trying to establish an authoritarian regime, you don't rip the copper out of the walls. The Nazis didn't shrink state capacity, they expanded it, right? To the extent that they have a strategy, it is to create so much chaos and destruction that we give up, that we despair, that we roll over and die. That's a stupid strategy because it is entirely within our power to deny them that. So when you feel that despair coming on, what's the antidote to despair? Anyone? Action, not hope. Not hope. Hope, oh, it's the thing with feathers. It's wonderful. It's so... Hope is fragile, and yeah, okay, it's great. You know what? Action. Anger. Anger is a limitless renewable resource. It's very sustainable. Carbon neutral, right? Stay active, stay engaged. They want us passive, they want us giving up. Don't give them that. Fight. That's my advice. And that's sort of my, there's my garbage pep talk. Thank you. Other questions? All right, Charlene.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Thanks for that summary. One of the things that came out of the strategic priorities session I thought was great, and if you can let everyone know and maybe clarify it, I thought Tim Kirby said that he would, for every of these priorities, provide the exact actions they're going to take for them over the 2 years, and then give updates within the 2 years along the way to council.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, Charlene, that is one of the things I'm most excited about. When I talk about the new work plan that's going to be developed, it's not just that it's going to be this static list. It's that, it's going to be broken down by strategic priorities. So we're going to see, for each of these priorities, what are the initiatives that we as, that the city government is taking on them. And we're going to be able to have more regular progress check-ins. And because right now, the situation for the past several years has been that things are scattered. You have study issues, you have plans like the climate action playbook or the housing element, you have one-off initiatives, you have staff initiatives that just come back to us sort of randomly at random times. So this new work plan and the structure that it's going to be creating, that itself is a big part of the idea of a transparent government, an efficient government right there. And that's one of the best things to come out of this session. And I'm really looking forward to having that. Next question. Anyone? Bueller? All right.
Hey,
Well,
hey, Richard, it's Peggy.
hi, Peggy.
Thank you for your pep talk. I've had that one in person. I do appreciate the call to action though. And thank you for the updates. That was very informative. I am very proud of our council as well, and I do believe we are the best in the county. So I appreciate this. I couldn't make Otto Lee's talk yesterday. It feels like this is kind of a little bit of that perhaps as well. Maybe he didn't have so much warlike metaphors and anger in his state of the county, I'm guessing, but I appreciate the urgency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. And I would strongly encourage everyone here to watch Otto's State of the County address from last night, because, and he did a similar sort of structure as I did. He did bad news first, then good news. But he gets into detail as to what's at stake in terms of the federal funding to the county and the risks that we're facing. So I strongly encourage everyone to watch last night's State of the County. Martin. The answer is I don't have a specific answer to that. And given the constraints of the Brown Act and the potential legal implications of that, even if I did have an answer, I don't think I'd be comfortable giving it in a public setting. The question was, what sort of action at a city level can we be taking to ensure that, statutorily allocated federal funds are actually spent as allocated? I don't have a clear answer to that. Even if I did have one, that's not something that I think that gets enough into the legal advice zone that I wouldn't be comfortable answering. What actions are you making? Just at the head of the question here regarding the national legislation with what are you doing that nation vision that is our political director saying this is the sort of thing that could show up in an endorsement meeting next year. And I, as someone who will be in that endorsement meeting next year, I very much appreciate that. Rosa. Actually, why don't we have you just talk into the microphone? I think that's easier. Right?
Thank you so much, Richard, for the summary. And it's really great to see you have long-term kind of process for this strategic priorities. And the number 3 was a sustainable city, especially active transportation. Yeah, actually, I would like to learn more about, your planning about active transportation. Like, I know you've been working for the SP Hopper, Silicon Valley Hopper. I'm wondering the timeline for that. And also we are facing the, VTA strike these days. So as a city, I mean, what kind of plan are you making to address this?
Thank you very much. And so in terms of active transportation, again, that's not the only thing envisioned under a sustainable city. So the SV Hopper is public transportation, not active transportation. It's still important. The city recently received a grant to implement from the state to implement the SV Hopper. I believe that the city manager said we're hoping, and he did mention this in the strategic session, we're hoping to have that up and running in fall in time for the new school year. Yeah, I'm very optimistic for that. I know I've had some discussions about the ongoing VTA strike and the impact that is having on students' ability to get to school. And I'm having some discussions with the city manager about that as well. That's not something that I can offer any promises on. I don't think that the SV Hopper could necessarily be brought on. In fact, I'm pretty confident that we can't bring that online in an emergency setting, especially since VTA is going to be operating it, and VTA actually operates all of these shuttle programs through VIA, which is essentially a subcontractor. In terms of active transportation, the big document here is the active transportation plan that lays out safe routes to school improvements, pedestrian improvements, bicycle master plan. On top of that, there are 3 specific study issues: the signalization of intersections on Fair Oaks. We've had 2 fatalities near Fair Oaks and Taylor. Fair Oaks and Balsam would connect Snail to Fair Oaks Park. We spent a small fortune renovating that park, and it's a beautiful park. And the people who live in Snail across the street frequently jaywalk to get to the park because there isn't a safe crossing. And then down by McKinley, that is close to Ellis Elementary School, and some VTA stops. There is the study issue on the Tasman mixed-use trail. That is going to be heard at the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission on Thursday at 6:30. So there's going to be a presentation on that. And then there is also the study issue on Hollenbeck bike lanes, which will also be heard at the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission meeting on Thursday. My condolences to those commissioners, because that is going to be a long meeting, but I very much look forward to seeing the results of those discussions. Does that sort of get it? At least some of the angles on that? Oh, yeah. So those are the 3. And Janet, why don't you come up here? Oh, the Zoom. We'll cross your name.
Really?
Use the mic.
All right. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't hold it too close. I realize I am horribly ignorant about item number 4, your model to prevent homelessness, prioritize new housing and support the unhoused community. I don't have a sense of the statistics for that. Are those available on the city?
I don't know. We did a point in time count, and I'm looking at Bruce because he might have a better know the answer to this. We did a point of in time count in January, which is essentially people get up at volunteers get up at 4:30 in the morning, fan out across the city, count the number of people who are sleeping in tents, sleeping rough, sleeping in their cars. It is invariably an undercount. But because the methodology is the same, the time of year is the same, you can at least get trend lines out of it, right? And the answer was several hundred people, right? And when you factor in people who are what you call housing insecure, who you might not catch in such a count, people who are couch surfing, people who have managed to grab a motel room that night for whatever reason, et cetera. I would not be surprised to hear, that we might have 1,000 people in the city who are unhoused at any given time. I don't know, but I would not be surprised to hear that. In terms of, what we're doing on this front, we're very close partners with Sunnyvale Community Services on this. We work very closely with them. We have a new unhoused services provider as of last fall, Project We Hope, that is doing outreach, that is helping get people access to the services that the county provides. The county is the main service provider on homelessness. This is one of the things that's concerning to me about the federal budget situation, is that a lot of the money for that, the county hospital system, county mental health services, comes from the federal government. But getting them connected to county services, there's a mobile shower and laundry clinic that they do, called Dignity on Wheels. There's the motel stay program. So you might have noticed that the tents at the library have been cleared. And that was a controversial decision. And ultimately, the city manager made the call that for reasons of public health and safety, it had to be cleared. The encampment had to be cleared. What we did, everyone who was in that encampment has gotten into the motel stay program. So they've gotten a 30-day stay in a hotel as we're trying to get them services. So we're doing a lot. It is a wicked problem. It is a very expensive problem, and it is a very challenging problem to address, but it is something we're actively working on. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Sue, good to hear from you.
Hey, Richard. I want to sing the praises of this council. I mean, when you said it's the best, it is the best. I am so excited that you're working together so wholeheartedly to tackle some of these very wicked problems. So you have my gratitude and you have my support. I have a question that kind of doesn't fit in any box very well. When I'm thinking about federal funds being taken away, I personally am worried about funds taken away from education that will cut classes and services for kids with special needs. I think everybody knows that we have, I think it's 30%, it's close to 30% of our kids have to have free lunch at school.
Yes.
This is a huge problem. And I don't know what the city can do. I don't know if you can work more deals with SCS or the county, or is there anything the city can do to help our education establishment get through this?
That's a hard question. I have half of mine to just hand the microphone back to Rosa. Okay. I think that the answer is that the city government needs to be in close engagement with all of our local and regional partners, the school districts, the county, the special districts, on any ways that we can partner to soften the impacts. As far as I know, and Rosa can correct me, the funding hasn't disappeared yet. It's that the stability and the uncertainty is so bad that, essentially we don't know what's coming next. We don't know what's gonna get cut. And so that has everyone on edge. But I think the most important thing that we can be doing as a city is to be in regular and frequent communication with our partners and, make sure that we're all able to coordinate.
You might do a proactive meeting, do one before the hammer comes down.
That is a very good idea. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
And Rosa, let's talk after this. I think, Crystal, I'm getting the hook. I want to thank everyone for listening and letting me ramble on. I am truly blessed to have such excellent colleagues, and I'm sorry they have to put up with me. But you know what? I think that what we've got in the city, we've got a great city. We've got a great council. We've got a great staff. We've got great residents. There is no place I would rather be in this storm. So thank you all, and I'm going to hand it back to Crystal.
Thank you so much, Richard. All right. Because we're a little challenged on video here, I'm just going to sit with the laptop on my lap and the camera on and the microphone in my hand. So let's move on to the next slide. And I also want to acknowledge that there are other council members in the room. Linda Sell, who is not participating in that prior discussion for Brown Act reasons. And online, I think I saw Charles E. Chang, Councilmember Charles E. Chang, and Councilmember Eileen Lay. So welcome, council members. Make sure I got everybody. Yes. All right, now we're moving on to announcements, and we're going to fit in quite a few announcements before our guest of honor arrives online at 3:15. Okay, so upcoming Dem Club general meetings. So just a little preview of our future meetings. Councilmember Mehlinger mentioned that the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission is going to hear about Tasman Road bicycle options and pedestrian options. Also at our next Dem Club meeting on April 19th, we will have Charlene Liu and Ari Feinsmith talking about this very topic. So be sure to come to that meeting. And then in May, we're having our board elections. So we've also invited Patrick Aarons, and that's to be confirmed. And of course, more that we haven't planned yet. So be sure to come to the next meetings. All right. And then there's a very handy TC Mac. I hope everyone's familiar with that. It's online and it shows what's coming up for council in the next year, essentially. So things coming up March 18th is a consideration of a proposed ordinance to incentivize retail at North Sunnyvale Village Centers. And then May 22nd is the annual budget workshop, always a fantastically interesting time, full day of council discussion on the budget. And let's see, June 3rd is the initial recommendations by the Charter Review Committee to the council, and June 17th is the budget adoption. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, and I did mention the board election in May, and our board has 9 members, and they are elected every year for 1-year terms. So all of the positions are up for election. We will be having a nominating committee, which is not fully selected yet. However, one member is Peggy Shen Brewster, who is online. She is going to be on our nominating committee, along with 2 others yet to be determined. If you're interested in the nominating committee, please contact me. And if you're interested to serve on the board, please contact me or Peggy. So the board meets every month to plan our meetings, choose our speakers and topics, and we get reports from treasurer and the membership and communications, etc.
It's a really great working group, and you get a lot of influence as to who the next speakers are and the topics that we cover. So I would encourage you, if you have interest, to do something and take action. As Councilmember Mehlinger encouraged, the board is a great place to start doing that. All right, next slide. All right, there was an election for Assembly District 26 ADEM, and that election happened in February, and it's closed, and we have 7 club members who were elected to the ADEMs. And some of those are here in the room. And if anyone would like to speak a couple of words, Gail, about your election, just say thank you, hello. Nothing to add. Okay. Congratulations. Yes. Martin, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody who registered for ADEMS and voted, and thank you all for your support.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, yeah, so Peter Allen, he's Doug Coons, Martin Pine, Eileen Lay, Naomi Nakano Matsumoto, Gail Rubino, and Carol Weiss, all elected to the ADEMS 26. So congratulations. Next slide. All right, I'm going to hand this to Ambrosia.
All right. So there was a newly appointed board members to the Sunnyvale School District, my friend Evelyn Profeta, and I'll let you guys read the details. This is just her bio from the school board website, but Evelyn is a Fairwood parent, Columbia Middle School parent in the past, and Fremont parent. And I've had the pleasure of working her in various capacities. I'm her youngest daughter, which is one of 4, is in my little Girl Scout troop. And her 2 oldest are in college. And then she has a high schooler at Fremont. And she does live in the Fairwood neighborhood. She really brings a great perspective of some of the challenges of living. I don't know, Fairwood, for that school district, Fairwood is pretty fantastic. But some of the challenges of getting to the middle school in particular. And I think she's a great addition. I was really happy to see that there were 4 candidates. And our friend Peggy pointed out that when there are more people who are applying for these things, it just makes the democratic process that much better. So it was really fantastic. Thank you.
So here for the VTA. Next slide, please. All right, and Ambrosia is also going to just cover this little update on the VTA strike and its impacts.
Thank you. Again, I am by no means an expert on this, but we just wanted, I'm sorry, I'm standing in front of you guys. We just wanted to touch on the VTA strike in the context of how it's affecting our Fremont Unified High School students, especially those that live north of El Camino, the school districts. And Rosa, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but they buy apparently around 700 bus passes a month for students. And it's really been a challenge. Not all of those live north of El Camino. I think it's around 400 north of El Camino. Those are Fremont students and Homestead students. I always like to remind people, like, there are Homestead students that live about 4 miles away from their neighborhood high school. And I have friends at both. My oldest son is a junior at Fremont, and it was testing week last week for juniors, which was really a challenge for those kids to get to school on time. Everybody else had a really weird schedule, which during the regular part, if there wasn't a VTA strike, they still would have the challenge. If you weren't a junior, you had to be at school. I think it was 2 different days at noon. And VTA doesn't have a lot of extra service at those non-traditional school times. So this has really just kind of emphasized that, yes, VTA has been a great partnership for FUHSD, but maybe it's not a long-term solution for these students. maybe we can look at the inequities involved in relying on public transportation, even with a free pass, and the need for a physical school closer for these students, a physical school in North Sunnyvale. So there's more information in our slideshow, and if anybody wants to chat more, Rosa, if you wanted to say anything, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to add. Yeah.
So our school district actually is planning to offer buses in the morning time and after school, which is busiest time of the day. So we made a contract with the private company, bus companies, and then we'll offer buses in the morning and afternoon. You can check the website, our district website. There's the information and then the map, how the private bus is going to run. So this is for the next week, and then we will see how the VTA strike goes, and then consider extending. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Linda Sell. I'm on the Sunnyvale City Council. I'm speaking in my own capacity, personal capacity. I was appointed by the council to be on the VTA board. So I sit on the board and I represent Sunnyvale. Parent emailed me about before the strike about what it would mean to the students and the parents. And I was able to impart that at the last board meeting to my colleagues and to the CEO of the big impact it would be to the students and the families. So they all heard that. The CEO has kept me informed as a board member of what she's doing, and that they're negotiating and they're taking this very seriously, and they're at the negotiations, they're continuing talking and at the highest levels, and they know what devastation this is causing for our whole community, and especially our students and the families. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. I was just wanting to say one last thing, that their FUHSD has sent a survey to students. If you guys know any high school students, there's a survey where they're trying to collect info on who needs transportation. And then Sunnyvale Equity for Education, a parent has made a survey also to collect information about just kind of in general, how is VTA service working for you? So those links are in the Sunnyvale Equity for Education Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambrosia. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, I just wanted to highlight the new service that just launched. It's called Perry Park Rides, and it launched in just on March 4th. I attended the launch event. I rode in one of them, and it was amazing. Basically, just like a shared Uber or shared Lyft within the service area. And so convenient. It just use an app just like you would an Uber or Lyft, and it's free. It's a 2-year pilot program, and it's paid for through transportation demand management fees from developers within Perry Park, as well as a coordination with the city. So it is a 2-year pilot program. If you have travel needs within this area, it is super convenient, and there's examples of popular destinations. So it includes the Caltrain station, it includes downtown, many parks, and the community center. So feel free to try it out. You just download the app and you can start using it.
I just wanted to mention this was a 2-year pilot, and part of it being a pilot is that it's also a grant from VTA. So Sunnyvale pays part of it, and it's a grant from VTA. In the future, we hope that the private companies will pay into it.
And it's not affected by the strike. Correct. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, Sunnyvale Earth Day is coming up before our next general meeting. So it's April 5th, right in front of the City Hall, 11 to 2. You don't have to register or anything. You just show up. It should be a beautiful day, hopefully, although rain does cancel. And last year was a really beautiful event. All the wildflowers were blooming, and there were, I don't know, 50 different organizations there. Really encourage everyone to attend this year as well. Next slide. Also, Sustainability Speaker Series is coming up this next week on Wednesday, March 19th. It's a webinar. This is the third event of this year. It's called Waves of Change with Sarah White, and it's from 7 to 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday. There is a registration. You can find, we'll send out this slide deck, but you can also find it on the website. So encourage people to attend that as well. Next slide. All right, another thing the city is working on. I was really excited to read about this. Sunnyvale is planning the East Channel Trail and studying it, actually. And so far, the council has awarded a contract to a consultant team to conduct the study. The council also approved the project funding for the study. And right now there is a lot of public engagement planned. There's a survey. You can learn more at the website, and they're also doing a call for trail ambassadors. So if you live really close to this area, it's planned for a 6-mile north-south stretch through the city. So that will be really exciting to see that come to fruition. All right, next slide. I wanted to get Carol Weiss if she's attending. I don't think she is. Mike, maybe you can talk about this one.
So the Sunnyvale Democratic Club has a book group that reads and discusses politically related, politically inspired books. And the next book, which we are talking about in a week from Sunday, is Rising Out of Hatred, The Awakening of a Former White Nationalist, which pretty much describes the book. The following month, we have Age of Revolutions. It's a book by Fareed Zakaria on it's kind of a historical perspective of different political movements and institutions, and we'll be discussing that. I don't know if we have any for May and June, if we have books planned yet, but we always have a great discussion, which you can attend if you've read the book, or if you haven't read the book, or if you've read part of the book. So it's always a very interesting discussion. So.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Going back to being plugged in here. All right. Gail, would you be able to talk about this slide? No. Okay. All right. Or yes, Martin, would you mind talking about this slide? No, you don't have to. Galen, would you like to talk about this slide?
For those who don't know me, I'm Galen Kim Davis. I'm Vice Chair of the Planning Commission and also a member of the Charter Review Committee. And we've had, 3 meetings so far. There are a couple of self-appointed shadow members who aren't here. Yeah, so we've been going over the charter almost line by line. We're going to cover the entire charter. There's been lots of great discussion. I think this is really good that we do things like this. I kind of wish and kind of afraid of the idea of if we did this for like the Constitution, where We just revised it. But this is good, meaningful work. For those who don't know, the charter is kind of the city's constitution. And for the state to overrule it, they have to make a finding of, I don't remember what it is exactly, like it's a state concern or something. There's an official term for it. But like overriding some local land use controls for charter cities and so on. The state is declared like a housing emergency. There's a phrase for it. But if something like that's not declared, right, that's the basis of all of our ordinances and so on within Sunnyvale. Interesting stuff. Well, it's a dry document, it's a legal document, and so on. But we're very open to ideas. You know, feel free to come and give public comment or send in emails and so on. This is going to go on for quite a while. My personal bugaboo is I worked in networking for over a decade. I seriously got tired of inventing things that only got deployed in other countries. So I want better broadband. I'd like to have community broadband within the city. You know, Comcast and AT&T just, I don't like them. Let's just leave it there. And there's a lot of technology out there where community groups could build their own broadband or something. And so I am going out on my own and researching cities throughout California that do have community broadband and seeing what they've done with their charters. I think the other members have their own areas of concern like that and so on. So talk to us, send us emails and so on. We'd love to hear it from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Galen. Yes. Is that better? I see it, yeah. Can you change to the next slide? Let's move to the next slide. Yes, thank you. All right, Gail, could you talk about this potential bill?
Hi. Well, you know me, I'm Gail Rubino. I live at El Dorado Mobile Home Park, and there's 11,000 of us, plus like 11,500 people that live in mobile home parks just in Sunnyvale. In the state of California, there's about 500,000 of us, and we don't have the nicest owners in the world in mobile home parks. As many of you probably know, they've been a lot of mobile home parks have been bought by investment companies, and they are little cash cows. I mean, you can make 10 to 12% just by not blinking your eyes. And there's some very bad things that happen. I'll give you one example. You could, if I die and my heirs take over my property, but they don't live there, and my trustee pays the rent, some parks don't take the check and they don't deposit it. And 6 months later, they take your mobile home. Kaboom, it's gone. There are lots of other grievances. The state of California, we passed a law that there is a mobile home park. HCD has a way that you can register your complaints, and it goes through HCD, and there's like 2,500 a year. Patrick Aaron, I can never pronounce it, Aaron's. First thing he did, yay, he has a mobile home protection law that the 25 worst grievances that come through HCD a year, he wants to give them to the Attorney General of the state of California, and maybe, you know, that'll be better than just nothing.
So I think what we should do is have a letter writing campaign, and we can do it here at El Dorado, and we'll make sure there's food. I'm going to see if I can either get Patrick or one of his staff members to come and talk about it, and we'll write letters and we'll get this law passed. It's really important. And you would be protecting 11,500 people in the city of Sunnyvale and 500,000 other nice people. Okay, thank you. Is that clear? Any questions? Yes. Yeah, I'll see what we can do. I can use next door. Oh, Linda's question was, can we get other mobile home parks involved? I'll see if I can use like next door and things like that. But yeah, they're already doing it. It's being done through GSMOL, which is the Golden State Mobile Home Residents League. Any more questions? I can't see if there's any online, so you have to help me out. Okay.
Thanks, Gail. Any other announcements? I did see Charlene Liu with a hand up, but although it's not up right now.
Right, thanks. I just wanted to add to what you said earlier about the East Channel Trail survey, and the current survey limits it to Sunnyvale residents. I don't know why, because this trail clearly serves people outside of Sunnyvale. It's such a long trail. It goes from one border of Sunnyvale to the other. In particular, a lot of Cupertino residents would use it to get to all sorts of destinations. So I asked staff whether they really wanted to limit the survey to just Sunnyvale. But yeah, so do take this survey. And then another survey there's two other surveys. They're both transportation ones. Hollenbeck Avenue survey. I don't believe you mentioned that, Crystal, so I'll just mention that. If you go to the Sunnyvale City website and then search Hollenbeck bike lane study, you'll see that there's a survey going on, and it ends at the end of this month. So please take it now, and it is to look at putting bike lanes along Hollenbeck, which currently does not have bike lanes. Obviously I support having bike lanes. I take it all the time, and so do other people, and a lot more people would take it if it had bike lanes. And then a third survey that's also ongoing is the Matilda Avenue bike lane study. There's a 1 kilometer segment south of 101 to Maud that does not have bike lanes in the southbound direction. It does have bike lanes in the northbound direction. So they're looking at putting in a nice wide bike lane with a nice wide buffer to make it safe for cyclists to get around. And this is a very important bikeway as well for people to get north-south. And my daughter went on it once. I mean, she was just biking, trying to get somewhere, and she accidentally ended on Matilda and then thought she was going to die because she discovered it didn't have bike lanes. So we don't want that to happen. We would ideally like to make Sunnyvale safe for biking for even people who are not familiar with the streets of Sunnyvale. So take that survey as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. And we have Rosa Kim with an announcement.
Thank you. So our FPHSD district has a FPHSD Earth Day event on March 21st at Computer History Museum. So it's between 4 and 8 p.m. and there will be more than 75 student projects by more than 400 students. So you will see the wonderful ideas of our students and their projects. So it'll be wonderful. So if you're available, please join us. It's Monday, so 21st.
Thank you, Rosa. Any other announcements from attendees?
Hi, this is Peggy. I just want to let everyone know that we are hiring a new superintendent, and there are community forums by Zoom and also a survey open March 17th through the 26th. I will drop that into the chat. Please participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. All right. Yes, we are expecting Senator Wahab, and we are not sure if she may be online or not. Ms. Wahab, if you are online, please unmute yourself. All right. We do have a couple more slides as we're waiting. Gail, can you change the next slide? All right. In line with things happening at the federal level and taking action, I just wanted to highlight a couple of other organizations that are doing all kinds of activities. So there's opportunity to take action with California and Santa Clara County Democratic Party and affiliated groups. So their websites are shown here. Again, we will send out the slides so you can access these links. And next slide. There's also a lot of kind of get out in the streets type activities with indivisible local organizations and their supporters. So there's a place on their website where you can just enter the zip code that you're in, and it will pop up with events that are near you. So examples include standing with signs and banners over 101 on St. Patrick's Day at an overcrossing in Mountain View. There's Tesla Takeover, which has been happening every Saturday, and it's, I guess, currently just happened in Palo Alto. And then many of you may have heard of Ro Khanna holding town hall meetings in Republican districts upcoming. That's going to be March 23rd. He's going to be in 3 red districts in Southern California. Anyway, so this is a great resource if you are interested in getting out there and taking action in the street. Okay, next slide. All right, and hopefully Senator Wahab will be joining us very soon. Right, I do see Peggy Brewster put in the chat, Sunnyvale School District is hiring a new superintendent. There are community forums and a survey. Oh, did she already said that? There's the website to access. All right, any other announcements as we're waiting?
Well, I can say one more thing. You had mentioned, Crystal, that or maybe it was Richard, that the BPAC meeting this coming Thursday would talk about Tasman. Now, I wasn't aware of that. I thought Tasman was coming before BPAC later in April, but I could be wrong. So I just wanted to make, but on Thursday, BPAC is going to be looking at Hollenbeck.
Okay, thank you, Charlene. I guess the agenda maybe hasn't been published yet, so keep an eye on the agenda. Thank you, Charlene. Right. Any other? There's an open microphone here. Anybody would like to talk? Gail Rubino, here we go.
So I would like to know if anyone's interested in having a support group for Democrats depressed or anxious about what's going on. And I think it might be fun to to see if people are interested, and we could do it like online with a Zoom and we could all just commiserate together. And I know I'm speaking out of turn, I apologize, but it might be kind of fun, and we might come up with ways of energizing each other, because it's really depressing. You can send me an email if nothing else, or make comments in the chat if you think it's a good idea, because there's no place for us to really vent, and we all sort of know each other, and it might be kind of fun. Thanks.
Right. We don't have our senator online yet. Is that correct, Mike? Okay. One of the things that had come up in our brainstorming in January when we did online brainstorming was how to engage with new potential members to the Democratic Club. And one idea that came up at our board meeting was for everyone to invite a person to come to one of our meetings. I brought someone today. Anyway, but it's a great way to introduce the club to others. It's no commitment and interesting topics and speakers. So if everyone brought someone to the club meetings, then we would likely eventually get more members. How many people are online? Great question. We have 23 right now. I did see the highest maybe was 24. And in the room here, there are 16, Ambrosia, our membership director says. Yes. So almost 40 people. And Linda Sell wants to make a comment. Yes.
So, hi, where do I go? Okay, this is Linda Sell, and I went to, I'm speaking in my personal capacity, but I went to the Century Club, Democratic Club, or Century, anyway, they have speakers and they have luncheons, and it helps to pay for the Democratic Central Committee headquarters. Anyway, so they had a speaker, they had David Campos, who's the vice chair of the California Democratic Party. And he said something very uplifting. He said, in the last election, a lot of states went red in their congressional and everything, all the other federal offices. But he said, here in California, we stayed blue. So he said there were 6 congressional seats that there was a lot of attention focused on it by the California Democratic Party and by the Republican Party. So of those 6 seats, 4 of them went blue. And then we're also 3 red seats that used to have a GOP Congress member. And now they have a Democratic Congress member after the election. So he said California did that with picking up candidates that were, good candidates from the community, having people, field people, staff people that were hired, that were local to those races, organizing the community, doing a lot of grassroots outreach, and all that and many factors turned those seats blue, Democrat. So that's something hopeful. It's not something that that is inconceivable to be done in other places too. So California can be a model for other states. So I wanted to say that little cheery note.
Thank you. This is Ambrosia again. I also wanted to mention at one of our last board meetings, we realized now that we're going to be meeting in person again more often, that we would like to have a hospitality group, people that would like to bring snacks. There are cookies, Girl Scout cookies, if anyone's interested. I've got my Girl Scout t-shirt on for those of you who can't see, and I might have extra cookies in my car. So yes, if you're interested in hospitality, please reach out to one of us. Thank you guys for your patience. Crystal is trying to follow up with Aisha Wahab's office. And I don't know what more can be done about that except for to wait patiently.
I have a question. So the meeting today is hybrid, right? And so is it going to be, there will be an in-person option going forward for the next foreseeable future?
Do you mean, are you asking only in person?
No, I'm asking at least in person, also.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of us meeting in person as part of this meeting.
And okay, and is it going to be at the El Dorado Mobile Home Park like it has been?
Yes, yeah, which is why the reason we couldn't meet with hybrid and be in-person part of us is that the clubhouse just wasn't available.
Okay, got it.
Yes, yeah. But we're really grateful to have this free space. And so if we don't have this free space, then it makes it kind of hard to meet in person. But yeah, and just because people who are here in person were like, how many people are online? And for those of you online, we're wondering, this has been one of our best attended meetings so far. There's 50 people today. Yes, right. Thank you.
Can you talk more about the VTA and the potential buses?
Yeah, so there's a question about, can we hear more about the temporary bus service that FUHSD is putting in place for at least next week. Next week, there's only 4 school days. Everyone has Monday off, not specifically for St. Patrick's Day. It's unlimited.
The bus, the bus services I mentioned, from the private bus companies is only for the, the school starts time and school ending time. But most of students started almost at the same time, but their ending time is it depends on the student. So we open the room at Homestead and Fremont. Homestead, I think library, and Fremont, there's another room. So the students can wait their coupling or buses in the room until 5:30. So our staff member is going to be in the room. And so I'm checking actually our FHSD.org website. You can actually see the map and time on the website. So yes, right. The communication went to the parents, and our administrators have been working hard to talk with the private company, and then they did the pilot thing. I mean this week, and then now we are ready to offer the buses. I didn't get the information about it, but for those 3 high schools in certain area, Cupertino area, I talked with the principal in Monta Vista, and they don't see actually the attendance differences because they don't have many students using buses, BTA buses. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, yes, please do. Galen, thank you.
All right, it's Galen again, for those who can't see me online, perhaps. So I was an alternate delegate to the DNC last August, and which was a fantastic experience. And I learned a lot. We have, as Democrats, we have accomplished a lot in California, right? Not just electorally. Nancy Pelosi did talk about how in 2000, the congressional representation from California was dead even, 25, I think it was 26 and 26 Republicans, 26 Democrats. And while we were there, we were down to, I think, 5 or 6 Republicans out of the California representation. But speaking to the other attendees at all the events and so on, what I found was that we have accomplished so many great things in California. We have state mandated human growth and development curriculums that acknowledge and embrace the diversity of genders, sexual orientations, and so on. So we don't get bothered at school districts too much with, I don't want to teach this at all. No, it's the state law. If you don't like it, go to Sacramento, right? So what I found was that as someone from California, my role was more to provide support and encouragement to the people from other states, because we're a lot further along in building an inclusive society in California than they are elsewhere. And so when I met, was hanging out with a trans delegate from Indiana, it's a nightmare there. Okay, come visit us in California. Take some time to breathe a little bit. Come out here. We like you guys here. Come out, you can breathe, recharge your batteries, and so on. So what I would say is, what do we do now? We double down. We double down on California, on Sunnyvale, on Santa Clara County. We double down, continue making it more inclusive, making it the best place to live in the country. We're already the most productive economic area of the country, perhaps of the world, and so on. Let's make it the most inclusive. Let's make it the most accessible. Keep doing what we're doing, and we'll win in the end. All right, I hope everyone feels a little bit better now.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Galen. Anybody else have any comments they want to share? No, Crystal's try to follow up with Aisha Wahab's office. Yes.
I'm wondering in Santa Clara County, and then also in Sunnyvale, if we're aware of much action happening by ICE. I know that there are groups here in the county, rapid response organization, but that I haven't been into it yet, but I think that's something I might want to do, but I don't know how large the problem is here.
Does anybody feel like they have to
Well, I know there was an incident where there was a man who was here without papers, who was detained by ICE in Mountain View. Yeah, and he was injured by them. He was illegally kept away from his lawyer. So when Galen said fight back, this is a way to fight back. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing up that issue. We will revisit it.
Thank you. All right, our guest of honor is online, and
I'm so sorry, guys.
Okay, it's okay. All right. Do you have the slide up? And let's spotlight Dr. Wahab. Thank you, Senator Wahab, for joining. So welcome to the Sunnyvale Democratic Club. And I know you've spoken with us before last year, and we welcome the opportunity for you to come back. And let's see, I have an introduction here, but since we're late, maybe we've talked to you before. Maybe you could just go ahead.
Definitely. Whatever question you guys have, I'm more than happy to speed round it and tell you guys all at the same time in one response. And I genuinely apologize. We're in a part of California for the PT Cup, and there is zero reception, so my team couldn't even get a hold of me.
All right. So yeah, we were just hoping for some summary of the excellent work and the bills that you had passed in the last legislative session, as well as the bills you have this session, and also what California is doing to resist the actions at the federal level.
Definitely. So first and foremost, thank you all. I will say last year we had 16 bills signed by the governor, which is a pretty impressive a number. 11 of the 16 were bipartisan. There are Republicans that are interested in just good policy and none of the theatrics that we are seeing at the national level. With that said, given that the election didn't necessarily go our way, we have also invested $50 million to defend the rights of Californians. And we injected that funding to the Attorney General's office to be able to a number of things. One, for the Attorney General to sue the administration. Number two, to give some funding to local counties. For example, Santa Clara County in particular has sued the Trump administration more than any other jurisdiction in the United States. We also wanted to protect immigrants and other minority groups and the rights that we have secured here in California. So that's first and foremost. Of the 16 bills, I will say one of the big bills that we pushed was to make organized retail theft an actual crime here in California. So that has been signed into law. Organized retail theft is not a kid stealing, a Snickers bar. It is actual orchestrated and organized gangs that target businesses. You see 5-6 people at a time going in and stealing from a local business. We're also seeing people steal from warehouses, set things on fire to cause distractions, you name it, we've seen it, as well as car theft. So very proud of the work we did to, for the Safer California package, including investments in substance abuse treatment, mental health, and much more. As far as this year, I'm going to be very honest. I have always been very much pushing affordability issues. And I belong to an affordability working group in the Senate. I'm actually the co-chair. And the goal for me is to introduce some effort around workforce development, housing, and energy. And so that will be unveiled in a couple weeks. So I can't necessarily share too much. But basically, on the housing piece, every single community group that is affected by housing, whether we're developing very slowly, whether it's renters issues, whether it's homelessness issues, whether it's you name it, we're trying to touch, right? And I will say that the real estate lobby is probably one of the strongest lobbies here in California and in the building, which is not the biggest fans of mine, but it is what it is. We are also trying to prevent some of the problematic behavior that we're seeing in multiple cities that are very anti-homeless, right? I understand homeless people make a lot of people uncomfortable. However, they are human beings and we need to treat them with dignity. And so there is a balance to strike there. And then as far as a couple of other bills that I have, one is the Investor-Owned Utility Accountability Act, which basically has 8 points to one of the most important parts that I've been pushing that has been controversial, to cap their increases. So last year alone, in the 12-month cycle, PG&E has increased their rates 6 times, all approved by the PUC, which we have no real control over. We also are trying to say that they have to harden the infrastructure. I went to the LA wildfires. It takes about 2,800 degrees to melt metal. And many of the cars were just in liquid form and just a trail on the street. So I just want to highlight that there's a number of different things that we have been trying to do, from hardening to capping what they do, but also limiting what ratepayers pay into the wildfire fund. Right now, we pay the majority of the wildfire fund, whereas the investor-owned utilities actually pay a very small percentage. And if they are making record profit, $2 billion plus, in a single year, why are they requesting rate increases, right? And so I will say the leadership of the CPUC, which I consider very problematic, and I grilled them significantly last month. They do not actually care to stop the increases or say, hey, there's too many in 1 year, or this is the rate. So we're trying to cap it at the rate of CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is basically inflation. Because I tell people all the time, regular people do not get 5 or 6 raises in a single year, let alone in a single year, right? For one. So I highlight those concerns. I will say that we have a number of housing bills as well. And just again, trying to tackle the issue of affordability, but also dignity for regular people. I will say I'm very proud of some of the effort on a budget play. I'm trying to increase the tax credits for not only renters, but then also make home ownership a priority. So right now, many developers are actually building to rent, not building to own. That's problematic. We are seeing also, for example, public transit wanting to increase our taxes. I'm not interested in that unless there's some accountability there. And so there's a number of different things that I'm trying to tackle. It may not necessarily be my bill, but I'm also very much involved in making sure that other people's bills don't harm us. So that's the work that I've been doing in the last, year or so. So happy to answer any questions.
Right, great. Thank you so much. We're going to open it to questions from the audience. We have about over 20 people online and about 16 people in the room. And so for those in the room with a question, I see just 1 second. Say your name and...
Okay. My name is Zubin Abraham. I'm a resident of Sunnyvale. I've been a proud neighbor or resident of this locality for about a decade. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm living in Sunnyvale and this Santa Clara County, because as soon as I moved in here, I spoke to my neighbors. Most of them mentioned that they've been in the neighborhood for decades, or their family has been there for 5, 6 decades. Went to the local stores nearby. Many of them are family-run stores that have been around for, again, many decades. So, and nice community. They have a lot of nice parks that have been built recently. I know the city decided to create this village centers, which on principle sounds awesome. But then recently I found out that the shopping complex close by which houses dozens of restaurants. And I proudly kind of tell my friends when I meet them that this shopping complex has 10, at least around about 10 different cuisines, international cuisine, different cuisines around. There's grocery stores, there's a Filipino grocery store, there's an international grocery store, there are businesses. But apparently this retail center, which has active retail, I know some of these stores have about nearly 1,000 customers a day, roughly, at least ballpark. This retail center is going to be demolished to put in housing, which in principle, housing is great, right? We all want affordable housing. And I'm a proponent of affordable housing and bringing that in. But my concern is the fact that this new housing that is coming in is at the expense of retail. So we spoke to some of the city council members who are also concerned about it. But they mentioned that their intention was to always have retail at the bottom and housing on top, so that it's really a village center, which awesome. Everyone wants that. But unfortunately, because of a state law that was passed in the past, I think 2019, I might be wrong on the exact date. The Sunnyvale City Council members' hands are tied. There is no restriction on the fact that there has to be retail anymore here. So as a consequence now, all these shops with, I know, close to maybe 100 jobs are probably going to be lost. People come from different cities, not only Sunnyvale, from many miles away to these stores, because some of these stores are very specialty stores where they're not easy replacements. So my question to you, or my request to you, is as a senator for the state, is this something that you can help the state in the long term, maybe in this case might be too late, but in the future, enable the cities to again get back power to kind of protect the retail, protect the welfare of the city, so that you don't end up with a food desert and so on. So just
Yes.
a comment there.
So I appreciate that, and I will say this. You know, I am the new housing chair, and there's a couple of things that are going on in the state. State policy on housing has largely been dictated by San Francisco as well as Los Angeles. And so, as a person who represents the East and South Bay, I always say that those two models don't work for our area, first and foremost, right? We are a very different type of community, different types of cities. And I want to preserve local control and community character as much as possible. You know, I was a local city council member, so I understand. Um, I also want to highlight, I want to promote affordable housing first and foremost, right? Above any other housing. The problem here is this: there's a number of things that data has clearly shown. So I'm not sure exactly what the city council has proposed and what the data they're basing it on, but mixed use facilities are not actually been working. So a lot of people have been wanting to create like a little mini Santana Row in their cities. It has not been as effective as Santana Row in itself. In fact, the commercial space has not been able to be rented out. You know, you need one or two big anchor stores and then a couple of the more indie markets that, you know, you were referencing. So I think that there's a problem there, first and foremost, of what is our goal, right? Number two is that the housing that's usually going to be on top of, you know, these retail spots are all rental, right? And I think that what I'd like to do is move a little bit further away from the rental effort and more create home ownership opportunities. 94% of Americans, regardless of Democrat or Republican, believe home ownership is part of the American dream. Number one. Number two, home ownership in California has tanked so significantly that we are second to last in the nation on home ownership. And I will highlight that that also prevents communities from actually becoming more of a community. So if kids and families are moving from home to home to home each year, they are not investing in their community. They are not interested in their community. They are not focused as much on local issues and much more. So I think that it's a number of different issues that we have to tackle. From the local level, again, I'm not familiar with this project 100%. I'd have to ask staff, but my goal is to make sure that cities have some say in what is being developed in their communities, number one. Number two is the fact that home ownership needs to be prioritized. And number three is that we also don't want to adopt bad models just because it works in one city. It does not necessarily mean it's going to work in the rest of California.
All right, thank you. Seeing another question in the room.
Hi, Senator Wahab. It's nice to have you here. I'm going to stay on the housing for a second. I would invite you, I know this is a little cuckoo, but I would invite you to come over to Sunnyvale and listen to these plans on these village centers. And I think you might have a different perspective on how to make them work. And God knows, I have no idea if that's the case or not. But the trick is to create a livable, walkable thing that works with state law, but enhances retail. Because I don't think Sunnyvale, the size we're 160,000 people. I think the issue is larger than Sunnyvale. I think the push for housing for the past 7 years has really created food deserts in many, many cities our size or smaller. And it's ruining what abilities we have on sales tax revenue. And Sunnyvale also has, as you probably know, a lot of car dealerships. Those are also changing. And car dealerships are not going to be a huge amount of sales revenue because the model's changing. So anyway, I think it would be really cool if you could get involved with the village centers, and I think one of us or maybe a council person could help you coordinate it. But I think getting your perspective on how to create these things. I know Santa Clara has exactly the same issue because on Kylie, there's a huge shopping center there that they originally wanted to have the same kind of thing, which was apartment house type things, ownership or rental, and then have the bottom floor be retail. And what came in, and it wasn't builder's remedy, but what came in was 800, 800 units of an apartment house, which is great. That's a terrific thing. But not having, getting rid of a bowling alley and a whole bunch of small shops that are locally owned, and also redisposing Palo Alto Medical Foundation, because they're going to have to move as well. Okay, I'll stop there, but if you could have some
No,
comments, that'd be good.
I actually agree, and I will tell you all this. I'm actually very, very open to talking to any, whether it's local staff, local nonprofits, local organizations. In fact, I had a conversation with our principal consultant in the housing committee, and I said, if you don't mind, I'd love to tour. Our staff has largely worked on housing as a whole. And there are models that work and there are models that don't. And at the end of the day, when we're talking about policy, we have to draft policy that would potentially work for the entire state of California. So I will say the food desert thing is a real concern. So in Hayward, for example, the city's kind of split in half, where half of it is up a hill and not necessarily nice homes or new homes or anything like that. And the other half is on flat land. And in the hills, there is basically a food desert, but there is a clear definition of also what food desert really actually means. But it's also very hard for people who are immobile to be able to come down the hill every time in a car and get their groceries, right? So I think that there's a number of things, but I also want to highlight this. Brick and mortar stores across the board are failing, right? And that is why so many people are buying online. They are getting their, deliveries, DoorDash to them, Instacart, things like that. And on Amazon, even Whole Foods is partnered with Amazon. So I want to highlight a number of different things that we are moving into a different type of economy. And some of the older models don't necessarily work. So what are we doing to, change that? So even the restaurants where we all like a nice dining experience every now and then, the model is moving into ghost kitchens where they have a big commercial kitchen. They produce from all the local brands and they sell and deliver from that. So I just want to highlight that there's a number of moving pieces here.
All right, thank you for that. I know we are at overtime for our meeting, but Senator Wahab, would you be able to take a couple of more questions?
Yes, of course.
Okay, absolutely. I'm going to go to Sue Cerrone, who's online, and then we have at least one more in the room.
Hi. I was going to ask about more housing in a more philosophical sense. When you step back and look at the overall situation, how would you describe it? And what would you ideally do to make everyone have a house? I also want to just refresh your memory, probably, but for years, there were a lot of opportunities in the Midwest where we had rent to buy. And those were really great opportunities for folks. So, and I've never seen that out here. So I'd like to offer that as one other possible way to go. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, Sue, I will say that the rent to buy has actually been brought up just this year. I don't believe anybody necessarily has a bill on it. We have a number of bills that I've reviewed. We haven't heard any of them just yet. That starts next week or this week that's coming up. Here's the thing. I really want home ownership opportunities. I think that, my generation and so many others struggle with home ownership. I also think that that is the root of the community. And that is, again, the very much American dream. We have over 1 million units behind how many homes we need for the state of California, right? Last year alone, we only built a little over 100,000 units. Okay. And I just want to highlight that because this is how far we are. And a lot of the bills that have been coming forward from some groups that I will say are largely co-opted by developers are talking about streamlining, but it really doesn't equate to anything, right? So, for example, there have been bills to streamline and make the process faster and so forth. Today, an average product of a development would take on average 4 years from start to finish. thought process, entitlements, material, this, that, whatever, improvements from the city, full development, and so forth. I was surprised by that number one. So then the streamlining hasn't actually translated to cost savings to the buyer nor the renter, right? Cities are also naturally interested in a higher cost product because they benefit from the property tax as well as the sales tax and so forth.
Right.
And that's been problematic, especially for our areas where things are already unaffordable. And then the reason why I care about home ownership is also because many people can afford the mortgage. They can't afford the down payment, right? And if we can keep people housed longer, kids in the same school longer, and much more, we can build a stronger community as a whole, people who are more involved in our local communities. So I highlight that as a couple of concerns. Some of the bills that have gone out that a lot of people talk about, again, largely from, these bigger cities, doesn't translate to what we need. We are seeing more and more people move further into the East Bay in areas that historically they haven't lived, where we're talking about Hollister, we're talking about Mountain House, we're talking about Tracy, we're talking about Stockton. But the jobs are still here in the Bay Area, right? And public transit doesn't go that far. Public transit does not go that far. And in fact, there are reports that even the public transit that are high functioning only service less than 30,000 people, unique individuals per year, right?
Wow.
The amount of money that we're putting in, the amount of tax that we are paying, the amount of everything that I'm seeing is problematic. And I'm one person, and I highlight this because I have to, and I believe it's my job to defend the East Bay and the South Bay in the vision and the communities that I represent versus some of the more dominant voices in the media, right? And again, my goal is to work with the cities. My goal is to ensure that all communities are able to be housed and treated fairly. So whether that's a homeless individual, whether that is a renter, whether that's a homeowner, even for the developers to ensure that it doesn't take 4 years. It should not take 4 years to develop a product, if you will, right? There are also different models, and I'm very concerned about insurance. So in all of our insurance hearings, they've stated that homes need to be at a bare minimum 20 feet away from each other to ensure that if one home is on fire, it doesn't spark the next home right next door. And we are seeing policy that reduce and reduce and reduce where it's barely 5 feet, 10 feet away from each other. And we are in a more dense community, right? So what happened in LA could very much happen in the Bay, but we also struggle with, we're on a fault zone. We also live in a flood zone. We also have, of course, the risk of fires, right? So if I could truly revamp everything on housing, I would be a little old school on, again, home ownership and how we design and the fact that there's some dignity with housing. That is truly the American dream, but then also make sure that everyone else is taken care of too. So it's not just one policy, I'm gonna be honest with you, but I will say the policies from these groups that are quote unquote advocates, they were fooling a lot of people, but it has not translated to anything that we as a society want. Home ownership, affordability, security, and much more. So that's my statement on housing as a whole as to where I see it. I know I have upset a couple of senators from the San Francisco area / North Bay and LA because their communities don't represent my community. And I have to be honest about it.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your focus on home ownership. I think that's the way to redress a lot of imbalances in the state.
Yes, and I do want to highlight, and I didn't even touch this, and you didn't ask, the ADUs, right? We are upzoning right now. There's a bill to remove the owner occupancy piece of it. So basically, corporations will come in, buy a single family home, split the lot into 4 potential units, create slums, extremely dense, unaffordable, because ADUs do not mean rent control. It does not mean deed restricted. It does not mean anything. And that a lot of ADUs are not even created for living in it. It's a gym, it's a office, it's a, secondary something. but it's not necessarily housing related. So I have a lot of concerns there, but there is a bill to remove the owner occupancy piece. I do not agree with. They also don't want parking associated to ADUs and new housing development. That is a big concern for me because, again, at the end of the day, whether you drive an EV or an old school Ford F-150 pickup truck, you drive.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Sorry, that was a lot, and I'm sure it didn't necessarily please everybody, but
All right, I think we've got one or two more questions, three more questions. Oh my gosh.
Hi, this is Linda Sell. I'm a Sunnyvale City Council member. I'm speaking in my own capacity, but I have heard a lot of people that they're just starting out and they would love to be able to own something. But as you said, they can't afford the down payment. So what strategies do you have for people? Do you have any strategies for that?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have been meeting with all the departments that touch home ownership, right? Or housing as a whole from the governor's perspective, right? And, the departments, for example, the Housing and Community Development Department, it's largely under the purview of the governor. But Cal HFA, for example, it's the finance arm of whether it's development or down payment assistance. They have two down payment assistance programs I'd like to revamp. Number one is the Dream for All that I'm sure you guys heard in the news. They wanted to expand last year. It went live in April or so, was done in 12 days, right? And that is problematic in a number of ways. Number one, the down payment is about 3.5% down, right? So it's not, super competitive in the Bay Area, but in the rest of California, yeah, you could say it's competitive. Number two, they have a shared equity model, which basically means that if you get a down payment, they have some ownership in the home. So if you sell it 10 years down the road, whatever equity you built, they take a percentage of it. I don't necessarily agree with that model because we're waiting years for the home to either be refinanced or sold, and then they take a piece of it. Whereas their My Home down payment assistance program is actually a flat fee. You pay it, you refinance, they take their chunk with their flat, 1%. And the money is almost readily available to the next person that needs a down payment. And it's full year on, right? It's going on day after day after day, month after month. Whereas the Dream for All, I think, was well intended, doesn't hit the mark, also not very much incentivizing me as a home buyer. And I don't think government should necessarily profit besides their administrative and maybe the 1% flat fee versus, taking equity out of a home. So there's a couple of things we want to adjust there. We also want to fund more of the down payment assistance. I think that's the biggest struggle for many people in our area that have good paying jobs, but still are struggling with down payment. The other piece that I have a bill on this, it's a junk fees bill. Basically, if you are a renter today, you are paying for your parking fee on a monthly basis. For example, I pay $175 a month for unguaranteed parking, meaning first come, first serve. If I'm lucky, if I came home very early, I get parking. If I came home at 7, 8 o'clock at night, I may not have anywhere to park, and I'm still paying $175 a month. There is not only the pet security deposit, but the pet monthly fee, which did not exist 5 years ago, right? Half of these fees are extra fees. There's a trash valet fee that is more than your Netflix subscription to just pick up the trash outside of your front door versus you just dumping it in the dumpster like normal people, right? So I highlight that all of these fees equate to maybe $500 to $600, and that could be money saved for a down payment. So renters are literally being forced to rent even if they have decent paying jobs. So I highlight that as all of the concerns I see, the safeguards I'd like to implement to protect people to be able to eventually afford something. So there's plenty of things we can do. I just became the chair of housing, and I want to continue to work on this area. I will say rent issues go through judiciary. It does not go through housing, which is another problem. So I try to keep my eyes very wide, what the departments are doing, where we can control things. And even, I will say, Santa Clara County's Housing Authority is probably one of the best in the state. The options that they provide over what other counties provide, I'd like to make uniform and across the state, because cities don't want to be necessarily a landlord. They also don't want to take the liability. They also don't want to do a lot of other things. So I think that there's a lot of potential elsewhere and partnerships and investing where the people actually do the work. So there's a lot of ideas there. Let's see, how far we can go in this year.
Okay, thank you so much.
Right, thank you. I have two last questions.
Yeah, my name is Saifullah Mehman. I live in Sunnyvale, and my concern only is this the Fair Oaks Plaza, where they are making 105 homes, townhomes. 105 townhomes will not make any big difference in the Sunnyvale total area, but hundreds of people will be get unemployed, and maybe more than 25,000 people who are elderly and they go depend upon that shopping center for the food and grocery and restaurants. Where they will go? They will have to travel at least 3-4 miles to El Camino or somewhere. So my concern is only about that complex.
Yeah, and I will say that is largely a local city council issue. So I will highlight this. Local city councils deal with land use issues. So what a zoning could potentially be, what type of properties they want to attract, what are the requirements they are setting. There are some limitations on cities more recently in the last 10 years or so. I will say like maybe 5, 7, to be honest, where state policy has overridden some of the local controls, right? And so if one of your council members or city manager would like to highlight this for me, I would love to talk to them and kind of see what we can do. That is a concern. I will also say each year we try to push a number of different bills on senior issues. One, just making sure that they are able to stay housed, because our fastest growing demographic amongst the homeless is our senior population. They're the fastest growing. They're also the fastest to enter the workforce again. And so that is a problem as well. And we're trying to address those issues. For example, my father is a senior. He has mobility issues. He's legally blind. He's not necessarily traveling great distances to get groceries if we aren't picking it up for him personally. So I really try to keep an eye on some of the issues regarding seniors. And like I said, even some of the state policies that are being pushed aren't conducive to the communities that we are actually building and living in.
We talked with the council member and city manager. They say it's a problem with the state.
So they would have to highlight that, because I know, for example, right now, we have a policy that says if you are building a certain level of homes, I think 50 or more, that a certain requirement is for residential and a certain requirement is for commercial. So I need to know more specifics, to be completely honest with you all.
This is Linda Sell, Sunnyvale City Council member, speaking on my own capacity. And I think our staff would love talking to your staff if they're not, and really excited that you're the housing co-chair. So housing chair. Wow, great. Thank you. So they'll be really excited. So thank you.
Yeah, and Linda, you have my personal contact. If you want to kind of circle us back, we also meet with the city manager on a monthly basis. So if we can just highlight that, if you'd like to be in the conversation, highlight which law you guys are specifically referring to. There is one law right now that's being pushed by a senator from, I want to say, Encinitas, where she's kind of talking about this particular issue. But what happened in her area is a huge development, almost egregious development came forward, and she's trying to make sure that the residential property for units of 50 or more is 2/3 residential. So the 1/3, even if she pushed this law, 1/3 is 100% dedicated for commercial because of the mixed use. So I'd just like to know a little bit more about what's going on.
All right, great. And final question, Martin Pine.
Yeah, hi, Martin Pine, Sunnyvale Planning Commissioner, speaking only on my own behalf. First, you don't have to address this right now, but it's probably more fruitful if you talk to city staff or councilor. But I would just flag that the issue at hand is specifically a waiver of mixed use and commercial standards under SB 330. Like that's the fundamental thing that's being discussed. So hopefully that's informative. But my quick question was, you mentioned at the beginning that you were going to be in part of a big housing package that was coming down the pike. Can you just give us an like a specific ETA as best you can on when those are going to be unveiled?
So I will say that the Senate operates very differently from the local city council. So sometimes our leadership won't allow us to talk much more than this. But I will say that at least for me on the housing effort, I want to make sure that we are providing dignity for homeless people. Obviously, we all want to clean up what we're seeing. I want to make sure that we are targeting renters and some of the concerns that they have. I want to make sure we are streamlining what we can regarding development. So it's literally trying to touch everybody in this package. And of course, even though the Senate may be behind us, we still have to work with 80 members of the assembly and then eventually the governor's office and his team. So what you see today may not be what comes out, 6 months from now, right? This should be, I hope to go live sometime in April-ish, if not late March.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you, Senator Wahab, for your extra time. And I know you have had some travels today and other extra meetings. So really appreciate you coming and speaking to the club again. Yes, thank you so much.
And I just want to tell all of you guys are, I genuinely want to understand your concerns, right? Especially even with our local cities. I will say we are limited in some things just because the bill process for the legislature literally takes the whole year, whereas cities are a little bit more nimble, which I loved about city council personally. But you can email me at senator.wahab@sen.ca.gov. So I just want to make sure that that's available to everyone. You guys can also just Google it, and I'm sure there's a phone number and an email address that you guys can copy and paste to, which is faster. But again, I really want to highlight that sometimes it's really hard on housing stuff because you have very loud voices in these two areas that doesn't translate well for our area. And I always try to push back and try to make it more reasonable for what we are trying to do. And I just want to flag that because I am one of 40 members. And I deeply want to preserve our community personally. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you to club members and guests for staying on a little extra. It's been a really good. Right. Thank you. And we'll adjourn the meeting now.